Hey guys, tonight we're taking a journey, not to a sprawling modern city like New York or Los Angeles, but across a vast, cold ocean and back over 1,000 years to the rugged, often unforgiving lands of Scandinavia and the Viking Age. We're going to talk about something incredibly universal, something that transcends time and culture dating. But trust me, dating in the Viking Age was a whole different beast. You might imagine fierce warriors sweeping maidens off their feet with grand gestures, or perhaps love at first sight by a roaring hearth. While there were certainly passionate moments, the reality was far more pragmatic, deeply tied to survival, family reputation, and the very structure of their society. You'll quickly discover that if you were looking for love in the Viking Age, your modern dating app skills probably wouldn't get you past the first fjord. Seriously. Forget your carefully curated profiles, your casual coffee dates, or your endless swiping. This was a world where a good axe wielder might be a better catch than a smooth talker, and where your family's feuds mattered more than your personal feelings. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're a young Viking, perhaps just entering adulthood, maybe in a bustling settlement like Berka in Sweden, or perhaps a more isolated farmstead nestled amidst the fjords of Norway. The concept of dating, as you understand it today, a series of casual encounters aimed at getting to know someone for personal romantic compatibility, simply doesn't exist. Your future, particularly in matters of partnership, is far less about individual chemistry and far more about practical skills and family reputation. This isn't a search for a soulmate, it's a strategic alliance, a blending of resources, and a strengthening of familial bonds. Imagine yourself as a young man. Are you strong? Can you work a plow, wield an axe, build a longhouse, or navigate a longship through treacherous seas? Your physical prowess and practical abilities are paramount. A prospective father in law won't ask about your feelings or your hobbies. He'll ask about your land holdings, your herd of cattle, and your skill in battle or trade. Can you provide for a family in a harsh, demanding environment where crops fail, winters are brutal, and raids are a constant threat? Your ability to ensure survival is your most attractive quality. And it wasn't just physical strength, your cunning, your ability to make shrewd decisions, and your leadership qualities would also be highly valued. After all, you're not just marrying a person, you're marrying into a family, and that family needs strong allies. Now, imagine yourself as a young woman. Your beauty might be appreciated, certainly, but it's secondary to your domestic skills and your ability to manage a household. Can you spin wool, weave cloth, churn butter, preserve food, tend to children, and manage the farm when your husband is away raiding or trading? Your capacity to be a competent husfru is your ultimate selling point. A good wife was crucial for the survival and prosperity of the household, a true partner in the demanding agricultural life of the Viking Age. You might even be expected to know a bit about healing herbs or basic first aid, skills that could mean the difference between life and death in a world without doctors. This wasn't a world that valued delicate hands. It valued strong, capable hands that could contribute directly to the family's well being. Academics often point to the significant, yet largely unrecognized economic power wielded by Viking women within their households. Beyond individual skills, family reputation is perhaps the most significant factor in your marriage prospects. Your family's standing in the community, their wealth, their alliances, and their history of honor or feuds all play a monumental role. Are your kin known for their courage in battle, their generosity, their wisdom, or their powerful connections? Or are they known for treachery, weakness, or a long standing blood feud? Your family name precedes you, shaping perceptions and opening or closing doors to potential matches. This isn't just about your personal appeal, it's about the collective reputation of your entire lineage. Imagine having to consider centuries of family history and grudges before you even thought about who to talk to at the local assembly. It certainly makes modern family dramas seem rather quaint, doesn't it? So, how did you even meet someone? Forget formal introductions or organized social mixers. Your social circle is likely limited to your immediate community, your family, your neighbors, and perhaps those you meet at the local thing or market. Marriages are often arranged within these familiar circles, ensuring that both families know each other's strengths, weaknesses, and crucially, their financial standing. Your parents or other senior family members play a central role in identifying suitable matches, as they are best positioned to assess the strategic benefits of a union. This isn't a blind date, it's a meticulously planned merger. This emphasis on family and practicalities doesn't mean there was no romance or personal attraction. Humans are, after all, humans. However, those feelings often blossomed after a match was made or existed alongside, rather than as the primary driver of a potential union. A good marriage was one that strengthened the family, provided security, and produced healthy offspring. If love grew from that, it was a bonus, a fortunate outcome. But it was rarely the starting point. This pragmatic approach to partnership was a necessity in a harsh world where individual survival was often secondary to the survival of the kin group. The very concept of romantic love as the sole basis for marriage is a relatively modern invention. In the Viking Age, it was a complex tapestry of duty, alliance, and the stark realities of life. Consider the expectations placed upon you as a prospective partner. As a man, your ability to raid successfully, to trade profitably, or to expand your land holdings directly impacted your desirability. A successful voyage to distant lands, returning with silver, furs, or enslaved people would significantly boost your reputation and your prospects. As a woman, your ability to manage a complex household, to oversee slaves or thralls, and to produce healthy children was paramount. Your fertility was a practical asset, ensuring the continuation of the family line and providing future labor for the farm. These weren't unspoken desires, they were clear, tangible expectations that shaped every aspect of finding a partner. The pressure to contribute, to be useful, was immense, shaping personal choices in ways that modern society rarely demands. This initial stage of dating in the Viking Age is less about attraction and more about assessment. You are being evaluated, not just by a potential partner, but by their entire family. Your future depends on proving your worth, not through charming conversation, but through demonstrated competence, a strong family background, and the promise of a secure, prosperous future. It's a high stakes negotiation where your very existence is on the line and where every skill, every possession, and every family tie is meticulously weighed on the scales of survival. Last night, we established that dating in the Viking Age was less about individual sparks and more about the practical, often blunt, realities of survival and family reputation. Tonight, let's dive deeper into how these unions actually came about, the fascinating, often calculated process of matchmaking, Viking style, where marriages were primarily strategic alliances, powerful tools for consolidating wealth, land, and influence, far more than simple love matches. You're a young Viking, perhaps eager to find a partner, but your personal desires take a backseat to the intricate machinations of your family. This isn't a scenario where you swipe right on a dating app and meet for a casual drink. Instead, your parents, your uncle, or even your chieftain might already be eyeing potential matches for you. These decisions are not made lightly. They involve careful consideration of generations of lineage, existing alliances, and potential feuds. Think of it less as a romantic quest and more as a high stakes business merger, sealed with the clang of swords and the clink of silver. The primary drivers for marriage in the Viking Age were land and wealth. A good match could mean expanding your family's land holdings, securing access to valuable resources like timber or fishing grounds, or gaining control over crucial trade routes. If your family had a surplus of cattle but lacked fertile farmland, your parents might seek a partner from a family rich in arable land. This wasn't just about personal prosperity. It was about the survival and growth of the entire kin group. Imagine a future where your family's very existence depended on this union, making every potential match a matter of intense strategic debate around the longhouse fire. Beyond tangible assets, political alliances were equally vital. In a world with shifting loyalties and frequent skirmishes, a marriage could forge a powerful bond between two families or even two different clans. If your family had a long standing rivalry with a neighboring settlement, a strategic marriage could turn enemies into allies, bringing peace and mutual protection. Or, if your chieftain needed to consolidate power, he might arrange marriages between his loyal warriors and the daughters of influential landowners, weaving a tighter web of fealty and support. You, as the prospective bride or groom, were a living pawn in these grand geopolitical games, your personal feelings secondary to the stability of your community. Historians often emphasize the role of intermarriage in reducing feuds and establishing long-term peace in Viking societies. Consider also the role of blood vengeance in resolving feuds. The Viking Age was a time when honor was paramount, and insults or injuries often led to long-standing blood feuds between families. A strategic marriage, particularly with the exchange of a substantial bride price, could be a powerful tool for settling such feuds, literally binding two feuding families together through new kinship ties. Imagine the tension at the negotiation table, where years of bloodshed could be wiped clean by the agreement to unite two young lives. This wasn't about love conquering all. It was about pragmatic peacemaking, a grim acknowledgement that the cost of continued conflict was too high. The matchmaking process itself was typically handled by go-betweens, often respected elders or community leaders. These individuals would discreetly inquire about potential partners, assess their family's reputation and wealth, and gauge the willingness of both sides to form an alliance. Imagine a distant relative, perhaps your grandmother, visiting a neighboring farm, ostensibly for a friendly chat, but subtly evaluating the domestic skills of their daughter or the strength of their son. These informal inquiries would precede any formal negotiations, allowing both families to save face if a match was deemed unsuitable. This hidden network of information gathering was crucial in a society without public records or extensive communication. Once a potential match was identified, formal negotiations would begin. This wasn't a private conversation between two individuals. It was a serious meeting between the heads of both families, often involving multiple generations. Discussions would cover the dowry and the munda. These were not mere tokens. They were substantial transfers of wealth, including land, livestock, silver, or valuable goods. Imagine the intense haggling, the shrewd calculations, as fortunes were literally weighed in the balance, all to secure your future. Academics note that the mundar also served as a form of security for the wife, guaranteeing her financial standing even if the marriage ended. The prospective bride and groom might have had some say, particularly as the Viking Age progressed and personal choice gained a bit more traction. A woman, especially, might be able to refuse a match if she had strong grounds. perhaps fearing for her safety or her well being if married into a particularly violent or dishonorable family. However, outright refusal was rare and carried significant social pressure. Your family's honor and future were often at stake, making individual dissent a difficult, if not impossible, choice. Imagine the internal conflict balancing your own desires against the immense weight of familial duty and societal expectation. The entire process, from initial inquiry to final agreement, could be lengthy, sometimes stretching over months or even years. It involved multiple visits, careful assessments, and the solemn exchange of oaths. The final agreement, often reached at the thing or a special gathering, would be witnessed by the community, solidifying the alliance and making it public. This wasn't just a private commitment, it was a public declaration, a new bond woven into the very fabric of the community. This methodical is strategic approach to matchmaking highlights the fundamental difference in how relationships were perceived. Love, while certainly present in individual Viking sagas and poems, was generally understood as something that might grow within a marriage rather than its prerequisite. A successful marriage was built on shared responsibilities, mutual respect for practical skills, and the strengthening of the family unit. The emotional intimacy you seek in a partner today was a secondary consideration, a pleasant bonus rather than the primary goal. You were choosing a partner for life, yes, but more importantly, you were choosing a strategic ally for your family's survival in a harsh and challenging world. Last night, we explored the strategic, often calculated world of Viking matchmaking, where alliances and assets frequently trumped personal affection. Tonight, let's delve into the actual art of courtship, the subtle dances of gifts, poems, and carefully orchestrated family visits that, even in such a pragmatic society, allowed for a degree of personal expression and, sometimes, genuine attraction to blossom. Because while love wasn't always the first consideration, it certainly had its place in the sagas of the North. You're a young Viking, and perhaps the initial family negotiations have gone well. A potential match has been identified, and now it's time for the personal touch. However subtle, forget flowers and fancy dinners. Your courtship rituals are deeply intertwined with the practicalities of Viking life and the values of your community. This isn't about grand romantic gestures as seen in Hollywood movies, but about demonstrating your worth, your respect, and your commitment through actions and words that held real weight. For a young man, a key part of courtship might involve demonstrating your skills and prowess. This could mean excelling in a local wrestling match during a community gathering, showcasing your strength and agility, or perhaps your skill in shipbuilding, carpentry, or even rune carving is noted and admired. If you are a warrior, your reputation for courage in battle or success in raiding would certainly precede you. You might recount tales of your adventures, impressing not just the young woman, but her entire family. This isn't just showing off, it's proving your ability to provide and protect essential qualities in a harsh world. Imagine the quiet nods of approval from her father as you expertly split firewood or recount a tale of outsmarting a cunning trader. For a young woman, your displays of skill might be more domestic, but no less important. Your ability to manage a complex household would be your primary selling point. This could mean demonstrating your proficiency in weaving beautiful tapestries, preparing a bountiful feast, or efficiently overseeing the daily chores of the farm. Your skill in managing resources, in preparing for the long winter, or even in brewing a fine ale would be highly regarded. You're showing your future potential as a capable horsefru, someone who can be a true partner in ensuring the family's prosperity. This isn't about being demure, it's about being competent and indispensable. Academics still discuss the profound practical and social importance of textile production, often a woman's domain. in Viking Age economies. One of the more unique aspects of Viking courtship was the exchange of gifts. These weren't necessarily lavish, but deeply symbolic. A young man might present a gift of finely crafted tools, a piece of silver jewelry, or perhaps a prized hunting animal to the young woman or her family. These gifts weren't just tokens of affection, they were demonstrations of your wealth, your skill as a craftsman or trader, and your generosity. They represented a tangible commitment, a foreshadowing of the wealth you could bring to the union. A young woman, in turn, might reciprocate with a beautifully woven piece of cloth, a hand-knitted garment, or a carefully prepared meal, showcasing her domestic prowess and her willingness to contribute. And then there's the power of poetry and verbal wit. While not every Viking was a skilled poet, the ability to compose verses, known as skaldic poetry, was highly valued. A young man might compose a drottkvet in praise of the young woman's beauty or her family's honor, or perhaps he might engage in a witty exchange of flyting with her male relatives, showcasing his intelligence and verbal agility. For women, their quick wit and ability to respond cleverly in conversation would also be admired. Imagine trying to impress someone with your rhyming couplets about a recent raid, or a clever retort during a communal feast. This emphasis on verbal dexterity suggests a society that valued intellect and articulation, even amidst its martial culture. Family visits were crucial, often accompanied by feasts and storytelling. These weren't just polite social calls, they were opportunities for both families to observe the prospective partners in their natural environment. The young man would visit the young woman's home, seeing her interact with her family, observing her domestic skills firsthand. Similarly, the young woman might visit his farm, assessing his living conditions, his family's hospitality, and his own conduct within his kin group. These visits allowed for more informal, yet incredibly telling, assessments of character, temperament, and compatibility that formal negotiations might miss. Imagine being subtly scrutinized by your potential in-laws over a meal of fermented fish and strong ale. It probably made Thanksgiving dinner feel like a picnic. While public displays of affection were generally frowned upon, subtle signals could be exchanged. A lingering gaze across a bustling market, a shared smile during a communal feast, or a discreet touch could convey unspoken interest. These small gestures, however, were often conducted within the watchful eyes of the community, meaning any flirtation had to be carefully managed to maintain decorum and prevent rumors that could damage reputations. Society was close-knit, and gossip traveled quickly through the longhouse. The role of gift of honor in a public setting was also significant. If a young man performed an act of great courage or skill at a thing or a feast, and was publicly honored, the subtle acknowledgement of a potential bride's family could speak volumes. Conversely, if a young woman demonstrated exceptional bravery or wisdom, perhaps in managing a crisis while the men were away, her enhanced reputation would attract favorable attention. These public displays of competence contributed significantly to one's marriage prospects. Despite the pragmatic nature of these courtships, sagas and archaeological evidence suggest that personal attraction and genuine affection were not entirely absent. Many sagas tell of love triangles, forbidden passions, and marriages forged out of mutual respect and admiration that grew into deep affection. While arranged marriages were common, it wasn't a universal iron rule, and individuals did, at times, have some agency in their choices, particularly if they were from powerful families or had strong personalities. Historians continue to debate the degree of individual romantic agency in Viking Age marriages, with some arguing for more personal choice than previously assumed. The entire process of courtship in the Viking Age was a delicate balance between individual desire and societal expectation, between personal attraction and familial strategy. It was a period of evaluation, demonstration, and subtle negotiation, where every action and every gift held symbolic weight. The goal was not just to find a partner for a fleeting romance, but to forge a lifelong bond that would strengthen the family, secure the future, and endure the harsh realities of life in the North. It was a courtship built on practicality, yes, but often softened by genuine human connection, a complex dance towards a shared future. Last night, we explored the nuanced, often practical art of Viking courtship, a subtle dance of displayed skills and strategic family visits. Tonight, let's delve into what solidified these unions, transforming a potential match into a binding alliance, the crucial roles of property and promises, how dowries and bride prices weren't just gifts, but intricate legal and financial agreements that laid the foundation for a new household and a reinforced family network. Because while love might be a feeling, marriage was a contract, written not on parchment, but in silver, land, and solemn oaths. You've witnessed the careful negotiations between families, perhaps felt the subtle tension as the go betweens relayed messages. Now, as the agreement solidifies, the focus shifts to the tangible assets that will underpin the new union. Forget modern prenuptial agreements signed by lawyers. In the Viking Age, these were ancient traditions, deeply ingrained in law and custom, and understood by everyone involved. Your future as a married individual depended heavily on these exchanges, for they provided the economic security and social standing essential for survival. The most significant financial component from the bride's side was the dowry, known as hemafilgia or hemanfilgia. This wasn't just a gift, it was the bride's share of her inheritance, a portion of her family's wealth that she brought with her into the marriage. It could consist of land, livestock, household goods, fine textiles, jewelry, or even slaves. Imagine assembling your dowry, a collection of assets that represented your future security and your family's commitment to your new life. For a young woman, her dowry was a crucial source of personal economic power within the new household. It was a clear demonstration of her family's status and their investment in her marital success. Historians often highlight the dowry's role in providing a degree of economic independence for women in Viking society, distinguishing it from other cultures where dowries were solely for the groom's family. Conversely, the groom's family was responsible for the bride price, known as munder or brudkopsgjöf. This was a payment made by the groom or his family to the bride's family, not as a purchase of the bride, but as compensation for the loss of her labor and as a guarantee of her financial security within her new marriage. The munder essentially became the wife's personal property within the marriage, serving as a form of security in case of divorce or her husband's death. It provided her with a level of independence, ensuring she wouldn't be left destitute. The value of the munder would reflect the groom's wealth and the bride's status, signaling the honor and respect accorded to the union. Imagine the discussions around the amount of silver arm rings, the number of cattle, or the acres of farmland that would constitute this vital payment. These financial agreements were not just between the bride and groom, they were between their entire families. The munder was paid to the bride's father or guardian, becoming part of her family's assets, while the dowry was brought by the bride herself into her new home. This exchange of property cemented the alliance between the two kin groups, creating a network of shared economic interests and mutual obligation. It wasn't just two individuals uniting, it was two powerful family units forming a new, stronger bond, pooling resources for collective prosperity and protection in a world where strength lay in numbers. Beyond these direct property exchanges, there were also promises and pledges. These could include oaths of mutual support in feuds, agreements on trade routes, or commitments to defend each other's lands. These were not always written down, but they were deeply binding in a society that valued spoken word and honor. Imagine the solemnity of such an oath, witnessed by the community, solidifying a strategic alliance with words as heavy as any silver payment. These promises extended far beyond the marriage itself, weaving a complex tapestry of interfamilial relationships that could last for generations. The wedding feast, or Brudkaup, itself was a public declaration of these agreements and a vital part of the contract. It was often a lavish affair, lasting for days, with copious amounts of ale and food. This wasn't just a celebration, it was a public ratification of the marriage contract, witnessed by the entire community. The presence of prominent guests, the exchange of gifts, and the consumption of food and drink all served to publicly acknowledge and legally bind the new union. Imagine the feasting, the storytelling, the laughter, all underpinned by the profound seriousness of the vows being made and the promises exchanged. It was a display of wealth, generosity, and the strength of the newly allied families. During the feast, the transfer of authority over the bride from her father or guardian to her husband would be formally recognized. While women in Viking society retained significant legal rights and personal autonomy, particularly over their dowry and munder, the husband became her legal protector and representative in external matters. This was a clear social demarcation, a public acknowledgement of her new status as a married woman and mistress of her own household. The bedding ceremony, or Godbrudkaup, was a private, but equally important, ritual that often followed the public feast. While its details are less known, it symbolized the physical union and the consummation of the marriage. This act, too, was often overseen by witnesses, reflecting the communal importance of marriage and the procreation of legitimate heirs to secure the family line. Academics still debate the precise ritualistic significance of these private ceremonies, but their role in validating the marriage was clear. The final element solidifying the union was the establishment of a new household, the dowry, with its household goods and livestock, combined with the groom's existing resources, formed the foundation of the couple's shared life. The wife, as the husfru, gained significant authority over the domestic sphere, managing the farm, the thralls, and the daily operations, particularly when her husband was away. This shared responsibility, built on the assets brought by both partners, was the pragmatic core of Viking marriage. It wasn't just about sharing a bed, it was about sharing the burden of survival and prosperity in a challenging world. These property exchanges and promises were the bedrock of Viking Age marriages. They ensured economic stability, forged powerful alliances, and provided a framework for societal order in a world without formal governments or extensive legal codes. They highlight a culture where relationships were deeply intertwined with material wealth and social standing, where every union was a strategic move in the grand game of survival and dominance. And while the concept of love might not have been the primary driver, the successful execution of these agreements laid the groundwork for a partnership that, through shared challenges and mutual respect, often blossomed into a deep and enduring affection. Last night, we understood how property and promises, dowries and bride prices, were the intricate financial bedrock of Viking Age marriages, solidifying alliances far beyond personal affections. Tonight, we tackle a surprisingly modern aspect of Viking relationships: divorce. You might imagine a world where marriage was an unbreakable bond, but in the Viking Age, women, in particular, held remarkably progressive legal rights to end a marriage, a stark contrast to many other contemporary societies. Because while entering a union was a serious matter, exiting it, though not without consequence, was often a legally recognized and surprisingly accessible option. You've witnessed the solemnity of the marriage feast, the exchange of oaths and property, binding two families together. Yet, for all its formality, a Viking marriage was not necessarily till death do us part, in the same absolute sense that later Christian Europe would impose. Both men and women had avenues for divorce, but the terms and social implications could differ. This wasn't a casual decision, certainly, but it also wasn't an impossible one. For a woman, the grounds for divorce were remarkably specific and, by modern standards, quite progressive. Imagine yourself as a Viking wife, perhaps living on a farmstead in a remote Icelandic valley. You hold significant authority within the household as the husfru, managing domestic affairs, finances, and often the thralls. This autonomy extended, crucially, to your right to leave a marriage under certain circumstances. One of the most frequently cited grounds for a woman to initiate divorce was lack of financial support or neglect. If your husband failed to provide adequately for the family, if he squandered resources, or if he simply neglected his duties as a provider, you could present this case to witnesses. Imagine him consistently failing to provide enough food for the winter, or neglecting to maintain the farm equipment, threatening your family's survival. This was a direct breach of his marital duties and a valid reason for you to dissolve the union. Another significant ground was physical abuse or violence. While a harsh world, there were limits. If your husband physically harmed you or your children, or if he publicly humiliated you with violence, this could be grounds for divorce. However, it wasn't just about the physical act, it was also about the public perception. If he struck you 3 times and you could produce witnesses, that was often sufficient. This highlights a fascinating aspect of Viking law, the importance of public testimony and community knowledge in legal proceedings. It wasn't about seeking retribution in a private court, it was about presenting a clear case before your peers. Historians widely agree that women in Viking societies held greater legal recourse in cases of domestic violence than their counterparts in many other European cultures of the same period. Perhaps surprisingly, public humiliation could also be a valid reason for divorce, particularly for a woman. If your husband dressed you in tattered clothes when he himself wore fine garments, or if he otherwise publicly shamed you in a way that diminished your honor, you could seek a divorce. Imagine attending a community gathering, dressed poorly, while your husband flaunts his wealth. This wasn't just a fashion faux pas, it was a deep insult that undermined your social standing and, by extension, your family's honor. Such actions were considered a failure of his duty to uphold your dignity. This unique legal avenue underscores the paramount importance of honor and reputation in Viking society. For a man, the grounds for divorce were also pragmatic. If his wife was found to be unfaithful, or if she proved to be barren, he could initiate a divorce. A woman's failure to adequately manage the household, to run the farm efficiently, or to be a competent husfru could also be grounds. Imagine returning from a long trading voyage to find your farm in disarray, your livestock neglected, and your granary empty. This was a significant economic blow and a valid reason to end the partnership. The divorce process itself was often remarkably straightforward, though public. It typically involved declaring your intention to divorce in front of witnesses. This public declaration was crucial, often made at the thing or at a communal gathering, such as a feast. You might declare your intention at the bedside of your sleeping husband, at the door of your house, and then at the thing itself, announcing your separation to the wider community. This public announcement ensured that everyone was aware of the change in marital status, preventing future disputes over property or legitimacy of children. The division of property was a key component of divorce. The dowry the wife brought into the marriage typically reverted to her, providing her with the means to support herself and any children who remained in her care. The munder, the bride price, paid by the husband's family, also often remained with the wife as her personal security. Other jointly acquired property would be divided, though this could be a point of contention and might require arbitration by community leaders. The legal right of a woman to retain her property after divorce was a powerful element of her economic independence in Viking society. The custody of children after a divorce is a complex area, with less clear cut rules, and often depended on the age of the children, the circumstances of the divorce, and the family's resources. Younger children often stayed with the mother, but older children might have more say in choosing which parent to live with. The economic implications for each parent would also play a role in this decision. Academics still research the nuances of child custody in Viking divorce cases, noting its variability. While relatively easy to obtain compared to later periods, divorce was not without social consequences. For a woman, a divorce could diminish her marriage prospects, especially if she was seen as difficult or the cause of the separation. For a man, a reputation for being abusive or a poor provider could also harm his standing. However, remarriage was common, and a successful, harmonious second marriage could help to restore one's reputation. It wasn't a scarlet letter, but a new chapter. This surprisingly liberal approach to divorce in the Viking Age stands in stark contrast to many other European societies, particularly after the widespread adoption of Christianity, which often emphasized the indissolubility of marriage. The pragmatic, often contractual nature of Viking marriage, coupled with the strong legal rights of women, provided a degree of flexibility that reflects a unique societal structure where individual agency within certain bounds was remarkably valued, especially when it came to ensuring the proper functioning and survival of the household and the family unit. Last night, we explored the surprisingly progressive legal avenues for divorce in the Viking Age, revealing a society where women held significant rights to end a marriage. Tonight, let's venture beyond the legalities of marriage and delve into the more nuanced, sometimes scandalous, realities of relationships beyond the wedding band. We'll explore concubinage, extramarital affairs, and other forms of partnership that existed alongside or in defiance of formal marriage, painting a more complete picture of Viking Age intimacy. Because while legal marriage was foundational, human desires and complex social dynamics often led to unions that didn't fit neatly into conventional norms. You might imagine a society where all relationships were strictly codified by law and custom, particularly given the importance of family alliances and property. However, the Viking Age was a vibrant, often turbulent period, and human relationships were, as always, multifaceted. The concept of concubinage, for instance, was a recognized, though generally subordinate, form of partnership. A powerful chieftain or a wealthy farmer might take a concubine, often a woman of lower social standing, or even a thrall. This wasn't a secret affair, it was an acknowledged arrangement, often driven by a man's desire for more children, particularly sons, or simply for additional companionship and labor within the household. Imagine being a concubine. You would live in the household, perhaps alongside the legal wife, and your children would generally be recognized as your husband's, though their inheritance rights might be inferior to those of children born from a formal marriage. While you might hold a more secure position than a thrall, you would lack the legal protections and social standing of a lawful wife. Your relationship was one of dependence, often without the economic guarantees that a dowry or munda provided to a married woman. This could lead to a precarious existence, your status vulnerable to your partner's whims or the arrival of a new, legitimate wife. Academics note that concubinage was a practical response to social needs, particularly for men with high status seeking to expand their lineage. Then there were extramarital affairs, the kind that, even in a less prudish society, could cause significant social upheaval. While not legally sanctioned, they certainly happened. Sagas are replete with tales of passionate, illicit relationships that lead to feuds, betrayals, and even murder. Imagine the thrill and danger of a forbidden liaison, conducted under the watchful eyes of a close knit community. The consequences for being discovered could be severe, particularly for the woman. While men might face fines or social censure, a woman could face public humiliation, violence from her husband, or even ostracism from the community, especially if the affair resulted in a child whose paternity was ambiguous. This asymmetry in consequences highlights the societal double standards that, despite some surprising legal liberality, still favored male dominance. Consider also the phenomenon of relationships formed during raiding or trading voyages. Viking men spent significant time away from home, exploring, trading, and, yes, raiding across vast distances. During these long absences, relationships could form with women in distant lands. These might be fleeting encounters, or they could lead to more lasting partnerships, even if not formally recognized as marriages back home. Imagine a Norse trader establishing a relationship with a woman in what is now Ireland or Russia, perhaps even having children with her. These relationships, while often pragmatic, reflected the realities of long distance travel and cross cultural interaction. The children from such unions might grow up in a hybrid cultural environment, blurring the lines of traditional Viking kinship. Historians gather much of their understanding of these relationships from archaeological finds and detailed sagas that recount foreign liaisons. The sagas, those epic tales of Viking heroes and their families, offer a rich, albeit often dramatized, glimpse into these complex relationships. They tell of love at first sight moments, of fierce passions that defied social conventions, and of the agonizing pain of lost love. While these narratives likely embellished reality, they also reflected deeply held human emotions and desires that existed alongside the pragmatic realities of Viking life. They remind us that even in a harsh, practical world, people fell in love, yearned for connection, and sometimes risked everything for passion. One intriguing aspect is the potential for same sex relationships. While not explicitly documented in the same way as heterosexual unions, the sagas and archaeological evidence offer glimpses that suggest such relationships, particularly between men, may have existed. However, these would have likely been discreet, as societal norms generally emphasize procreation and the continuation of family lines through heterosexual marriage. Academic discussion on same sex relationships in the Viking Age is ongoing, relying largely on interpreting subtle clues in historical texts. The social landscape was not a monolith. Different regions and different social classes likely held varying attitudes towards these non traditional relationships. In more isolated farming communities, where kinship ties were paramount, deviations from formal marriage might have been met with stronger disapproval. In bustling trade centers like Hedeby or Jorvik, or among the transient warrior class, there might have been more fluidity and acceptance of diverse arrangements. This regional variation highlights the complexity of Viking society, which was far from a single, unified culture. Finally, consider the children born outside of formal marriage. While their inheritance rights might be diminished, they were often still recognized as belonging to their father's lineage, particularly if he acknowledged them. This contrasts with some other European societies where illegitimacy carried a much harsher stigma. For Viking society, the continuation of the family line, regardless of the precise marital status of the parents, was often paramount. These children might not have the same social standing as their legitimate siblings, but they were not entirely cast out, reflecting a pragmatic need for more hands to work the land and fight. The tapestry of Viking relationships, therefore, was rich and varied, extending far beyond the solemn vows of formal marriage. It encompassed recognized concubinage, illicit affairs, cross cultural liaisons, and perhaps even same sex partnerships, all existing within a society that was both fiercely traditional and surprisingly adaptable. These relationships, whether sanctioned or secretive, reveal the enduring complexities of human connection, passion, and the constant negotiation between individual desire and the demands of a pragmatic, often brutal world. Last night, we explored the fascinating, often unwritten rules of Viking relationships beyond the wedding band, delving into concubinage and illicit affairs. Tonight, let's step into the grand halls and flickering firelight where sagas were recited, for these epic tales offer an unparalleled, albeit dramatized, window into sagas of love and loss, reflecting both the fierce passions and the stark pragmatism that defined Viking Age relationship. Because while real life was often about survival, the stories they told themselves revealed a deep human yearning for connection, loyalty, and fierce devotion. You might think of Viking sagas as solely tales of brutal battles, daring raids, and glorious conquests, and while they certainly contain plenty of those, they are also rich tapestries woven with complex human relationships. These aren't just historical records, they are profound narratives, often orally composed and passed down through generations, that explored the full spectrum of human emotion, including love, jealousy, betrayal, and heartbreak. Imagine gathering around a roaring fire on a long winter's night, listening to a skilled skald or storyteller recount a tale where love could ignite a blood feud or secure a lasting peace. The sagas often depict love at first sight, or at least a powerful immediate attraction, challenging the notion that all Viking unions were purely pragmatic. Characters often fall deeply in love, sometimes defying familial wishes or social conventions. Think of the intense, often tragic, love stories found in sagas like that of Gunlaug Serpent Tongue and Helga the Fair. Their love transcends long separations, feuds, and even other marriages, demonstrating a fierce loyalty that readers still find compelling centuries later. These tales suggest that even in a harsh society, the human heart was capable of profound, often overwhelming, emotion. Academics still debate the extent to which sagas reflected real social norms versus idealized narratives, but they undoubtedly captured a core truth of human experience. However, these passionate loves were often set against the backdrop of a brutal reality. The sagas frequently explore the conflict between personal desire and familial duty. A hero might be deeply in love with a woman, but his family might demand he marry another for strategic reasons or to settle a feud. Imagine the internal turmoil, the heartbreaking choices faced by characters forced to sacrifice personal happiness for the greater good of their kin. These narratives serve as a powerful reminder that while love might burn brightly, the demands of survival and social obligation often held more sway in Viking Age life. The concept of honor played a monumental role in saga relationships. A man's honor might be tied to his ability to protect his wife and family, or to avenge an insult against them. A woman's honor was tied to her reputation, her domestic competence, and her loyalty to her husband and kin. Any perceived slight, any act of dishonor could lead to devastating consequences, not just for the individuals involved, but for entire families. Imagine a character choosing to break off an engagement, or even a marriage, because of a slight against his family's honor. These weren't arbitrary decisions. They were deeply rooted in a code that governed all social interactions. Jealousy and betrayal are also recurring themes in the sagas, often leading to tragic outcomes. Love triangles, secret affairs, and acts of infidelity frequently ignite devastating feuds, leading to bloodshed and revenge. These tales are unflinching in their depiction of human weakness and the destructive power of unchecked emotions. They served as cautionary tales, reminding audiences of the perils of defying social norms or succumbing to illicit desires. The dramatic escalation of a slight into a full blown blood feud, often sparked by a perceived slight to a woman's honor or a jealous rage, is a common narrative thread. Yet, amidst the violence and pragmatism, the sagas also celebrate enduring loyalty and profound grief. When a beloved spouse dies, characters often express deep sorrow and lament their loss in moving, poetic verses. The bond forged through shared hardship, through years of managing a household and raising children together, often grew into a deep and abiding affection that transcended the initial strategic reasons for marriage. Imagine a hero, stoic in battle, breaking down in grief over the loss of his wife, demonstrating that even the fiercest warriors held tender hearts. These moments of raw emotion offer a powerful counterpoint to the image of emotionless, hardened Vikings. The sagas also shed light on the expectations placed on women within relationships. While men might go on raids or trading voyages, women were often depicted as strong, capable managers of the household, holding considerable authority in domestic affairs. They were often consulted on important decisions, and their wisdom and counsel were highly valued. Characters like Aud the Deep-Minded in the Icelandic sagas, a powerful chieftainess and settler, exemplify the agency and influence Viking women could wield, even in a patriarchal society. Their strength and independence within a partnership were often celebrated qualities, not weaknesses. This image of the strong, capable Viking woman, often a stark contrast to women in other European societies of the time, is a unique detail that continues to fascinate historians. The concept of vergild also played a role, though grimly, in relationships. If a family member was killed, the injured party could demand vergild, a financial compensation, to avoid a blood feud. Sometimes, the inability to pay or receive such compensation could lead to continued violence, influencing marital choices and alliances. Imagine a family seeking a marriage partner not just for their wealth, but for their ability to contribute to or protect against such payments, ensuring their future security. Ultimately, the sagas reveal that love in the Viking Age was a complex tapestry woven from threads of passion, duty, honor, pragmatism, and raw human emotion. It wasn't always easy, and it certainly wasn't a fairy tale, but it was real, forged in the crucible of a demanding world, and enduring enough to inspire epic poems and tales that captivated audiences for centuries. These stories remind us that while the external circumstances of dating have changed dramatically, the fundamental human desire for connection, for belonging, and for love remains a constant, echoing across 1,000 years of history. Last night, we delved into the grand narratives of Viking sagas, seeing how love and loss were woven into their epic tales. Tonight, let's confront a more mundane, yet deeply impactful, reality for Viking Age relationships: the warrior's return, and the profound challenges of maintaining connections, particularly during those long, perilous voyages across the seas. Because while the heart might yearn for constancy, the vast oceans and distant shores often tested bonds in ways that modern relationships rarely face. You're a Viking man, perhaps a skilled sailor and warrior, preparing for a long journey. Maybe you're heading east, down the rivers of Russia, trading furs and amber for silver, or perhaps west, across the formidable North Atlantic, seeking new lands in Iceland or Greenland. Your wife and family wave goodbye from the shore of your fjord or settlement. Their faces a mixture of pride, worry, and the grim understanding that this might be their last farewell. This isn't a business trip with a guaranteed return date. This is an open-ended venture into the unknown, fraught with danger, and where communication with home is utterly non-existent. Imagine the sheer duration of these absences. A trading voyage could last months, a raiding expedition just as long, and a settlement venture, like those to Iceland or Greenland, could mean years or even a permanent separation from your birthland. There's no texting, no video calls, no letters. Once you leave, you are entirely cut off from your loved ones. Your wife back home has no idea if you're alive or dead, if your ship was lost in a storm, if you were slain in battle, or if you simply decided to settle in a new land. This profound uncertainty would breed constant anxiety, a quiet dread that would gnaw at the edges of daily life for both those who left and those who stayed behind. Historians often emphasize this information black hole as a significant stressor for Viking Age families. For the wife left behind, her responsibilities would suddenly multiply. She transforms from husfru to sole manager of the farm. She oversees the planting and harvesting, manages the livestock, handles the thralls, and raises the children, all while contending with the ever-present threat of raids from rival clans or unexpected natural disasters. Her strength and competence become paramount, not just for her own survival, but for the entire family's. Imagine the sheer burden of this solitary responsibility, coupled with the gnawing worry for her absent husband. She couldn't afford to falter. The future of her children depended on her resilience and unwavering dedication. And what about temptation and loyalty during these long separations for the men on distant shores, away from the watchful eyes of their community? New opportunities for relationships could arise. They might form temporary liaisons with women in the lands they visited, or even take concubines. Some sagas hint at men forming new families in distant settlements, leading to complex and sometimes tragic situations upon their unexpected return home. Imagine the internal conflict, the draw of a new connection in a lonely land versus the vows and family waiting across the sea. Academics still debate the prevalence of such second families abroad, but historical and archaeological evidence suggests it was a real phenomenon. For the wives at home, fidelity was also tested, though arguably with far greater social repercussions. While the Viking Age had a more pragmatic view of divorce, a woman whose husband was merely absent was still legally married. Rumors of infidelity could ruin her reputation, potentially leading to social ostracism or even violence from her husband's kin if he returned and found himself dishonored. Yet, human nature being what it is, some relationships undoubtedly formed during these long periods of waiting, often born of loneliness and desperation. The social pressure to remain loyal, even in the face of indefinite absence, was immense. The return itself, if it happened, was often a fraught event. Imagine the sudden sight of a longship on the horizon after years of silence. The mix of joy, relief, and profound anxiety would be overwhelming. Has he changed? Is he still the man you married? Has he brought wealth? Or just more mouths to feed? Has she remained faithful? Are the children thriving? The initial reunion, while joyous, could be quickly followed by an intense period of readjustment, as two lives that had diverged now had to reintegrate. And sometimes there was no return. Many men never came back from their voyages, lost to storms, disease, or battle in distant lands. Their wives and families would often live in a state of indefinite limbo, never truly knowing their fate. There were no official death notifications, no life insurance policies. After a certain period, if a man didn't return, he might be presumed dead, allowing his wife to remarry, often out of necessity to secure her and her children's future. Imagine the heartbreak of finally giving up hope, of making the difficult decision to move on, perhaps years after your husband sailed away. This prolonged grief, unacknowledged and unresolvable, would be a quiet burden for countless Viking Age women. The transmission of cultural values and news during these absences also played a subtle role. When men returned, they brought back tales of distant lands, new ideas, and often foreign goods. This enriched the household but could also introduce new tensions or challenges to existing social norms. The interaction between Viking men, who had experienced different cultures, and their wives who had remained in the traditional homeland, might have led to subtle shifts in domestic dynamics and expectations, albeit slowly. Albeit, ultimately, the long voyages of the Viking Age put immense strain on relationships. They highlighted the resilience required of those who stayed behind, the constant uncertainty for those who ventured forth, and the profound challenges of maintaining emotional and practical connections across vast, unyielding distances. The thing, the local assembly, might have had laws governing property and divorce, but it had no power over the storms of the North Atlantic or the temptations of a foreign land. The enduring love and loyalty that did survive the trials are a testament not just to the strength of individual bonds, but to the deep societal value placed on family and continuity in a world of constant flux. Last night, we explored the immense strains placed on Viking relationships by long voyages and the uncertainty of a warrior's return. Tonight, let's zoom in on the immediate environment of daily life and understand how social circles and gossip weren't just trivial pastimes, but powerful forces that profoundly shaped romantic prospects, reinforced societal norms, and could make or break a reputation in the close knit communities of the Viking Age. Because while you might think of a casual chat over coffee today, in their world, a whispered rumor could have very real, lasting consequences. You're a young Viking, perhaps living in a small, isolated village nestled by a fjord in Norway, or a more bustling trade center like Hedeby. Your life is inherently communal. You work alongside your neighbors, share meals, attend local assemblies, and participate in religious rituals together. There's no anonymity here, no sprawling city where you can get lost in the crowd. Everyone knows everyone else, and, crucially, everyone knows everyone else's business. This constant proximity and interdependency meant that your reputation was your most valuable social currency. Imagine the subtle dynamics at play during a communal feast or a gathering at the thing. Every interaction, every word, every gesture is observed and interpreted. Are you a skilled farmer, a courageous warrior, a generous host, a diligent husfru? Your demonstrated competence and adherence to societal values are constantly being assessed by potential in laws, rivals, and the broader community. Conversely, any perceived laziness, cowardice, or dishonesty would quickly become common knowledge, effectively diminishing your romantic prospects and potentially harming your family's standing. This isn't just about what you say, it's about what you do, consistently, day in and day out. And then there's gossip. Oh, the power of gossip in a pre internet, pre mass media society. News traveled by word of mouth, amplified and embellished with each retelling. A minor misunderstanding could quickly escalate into a damaging rumor. If you, as a young man, were seen shirking your duties, or, as a young woman, were perceived as unkempt or idle, that information would spread like wildfire through the community. Imagine a hushed conversation over a spinning wheel, or a knowing glance exchanged during a shared meal. These subtle acts of social judgment could be incredibly potent, shaping public opinion long before any formal accusations were made. Historians widely acknowledge the powerful informal social controls exerted by gossip in pre-modern, tight-knit communities. The community's approval of a match was incredibly important. Even if families agreed on a strategic alliance, the wider community's perception mattered. If a match was seen as ill-advised, perhaps because of a hidden family feud, a questionable past, or a perceived imbalance in status, that disapproval could create social friction for the new couple. Conversely, a match that was widely supported, perhaps because it brought peace between feuding families, or strengthened the community would be celebrated and welcomed. This collective endorsement provided a powerful social safety net for the new union, reinforcing its legitimacy and ensuring broader support. Consider the role of public assemblies and gatherings. The thing, the local assembly, was not just a place for legal disputes and political decisions, it was a vital social hub. People gathered from surrounding farmsteads, trading goods, exchanging news, and observing potential partners. A well placed compliment from a respected elder, or a public display of your skill in a wrestling match or a poetic flighting, could significantly boost your reputation. Conversely, a public argument or a foolish display could be socially disastrous. Imagine the nervous anticipation as young people navigated these social minefields, knowing that their future prospects could be decided by a single interaction. The Viking Age also had a strong sense of honor and shame. To be shamed publicly was often worse than physical injury. This played a significant role in romantic relationships. If a man dishonored a woman, or if a woman brought shame upon her family through illicit behavior, the repercussions could be severe. This rigid social code, enforced by community consensus, served as a powerful deterrent against actions that could undermine the stability of families and the social fabric. Academics still discuss the profound importance of Solarstein and NAD in governing Viking Age behavior. However, social circles and gossip weren't always negative. They also provided a crucial network of support and information. If you were looking for a suitable partner, your relatives and friends would likely act as informal matchmakers, discreetly inquiring about potential candidates, vouching for your character, and smoothing the way for initial interactions. They would provide valuable intelligence about potential partners, their true temperament, their hidden skills, or any undisclosed debts their family might carry. This communal knowledge base, built on generations of shared history, was an invaluable resource in a society without formal records. The subtle pressures of social conformity were also at play. While there were certainly strong, independent personalities in the Viking Age, individuals often felt compelled to choose partners who would be accepted and approved by their community. Going against the grain, defying societal expectations, could lead to social isolation, making life incredibly difficult in a world where survival often depended on communal support. Imagine the internal conflict between following your heart and adhering to the expectations of your kin and community, knowing that choosing one might mean sacrificing the other. Finally, the stories and sagas circulated within these social circles further reinforced norms and archetypes. Tales of successful marriages, of brave warriors and wise husfrur, provided models for ideal partnerships. Conversely, cautionary tales of failed unions, feuds sparked by infidelity, or disastrous matches served as lessons. These narratives, passed down orally, shaped expectations and subtly guided individuals towards behaviors and choices that were deemed socially acceptable and beneficial to the community. The collective memory and storytelling traditions were powerful tools for social education, shaping how people perceived and pursued relationships. Ultimately, dating in the Viking Age was an intensely social affair, deeply intertwined with the fabric of the community. Your reputation, your family's standing, and the whispered opinions of your neighbors held immense power, shaping every aspect of your romantic prospects. It was a world where privacy was scarce and every action was potentially public, forcing individuals to navigate a complex web of social expectations and informal judgments. And yet, within these constraints, people still found ways to connect, to forge bonds, and to build relationships that, against all odds, endured the scrutiny and embraced the challenges of a close knit, demanding world. Last night, we understood how social circles and the omnipresent force of gossip fundamentally shaped romantic prospects and enforced norms in the close knit Viking Age communities. Tonight, As our journey through Viking dating draws to a close, let's reflect on the enduring human need for love and connection amidst a harsh land. How, even in a world defined by survival, the profound yearning for partnership persisted, shaping lives and echoing through the sagas and archaeological finds we still uncover today. Because while the challenges were immense, the heart, as always, found a way. You've explored a world where dating was far from casual, a complex tapestry woven with threads of pragmatism, family alliances, and economic necessity. Yet, despite the strategic calculations and the societal pressures, the fundamental human desire for companionship, for intimacy, and for a trusted partner to navigate life's challenges remained a powerful, undeniable force. This wasn't a world that indulged in fleeting romances. It was a world where a good partnership was quite literally a matter of survival, and thus deeply valued. Imagine the sheer comfort of a shared hearth on a long, brutal Viking winter night. After a day of backbreaking labor on the farm, or a perilous journey across stormy seas, the presence of a loyal spouse, a trusted partner, offered a profound sense of security and solace. This wasn't just emotional comfort, it was practical. A capable husfru ensured the house was warm, the food preserved, and the children cared for. A strong husband provided protection, managed the farm, and brought in resources. This interdependence fostered a deep bond, a partnership forged in the crucible of shared hardship. Love, in this context, wasn't a fragile emotion, it was a robust connection, hardened by necessity and strengthened by mutual respect for competence. The raising of children also formed a powerful bond. In a world with high infant mortality and constant dangers, the shared responsibility of bringing up healthy, capable offspring was paramount. Parents collaborated, each playing their vital role, instilling skills, values, and an understanding of the world. The laughter of children, the small victories of their growth and learning, would be cherished moments, providing light and purpose amidst the daily struggle. These shared joys and burdens undoubtedly deepened the affection between partners, transforming a strategic alliance into a loving family unit. Academics often highlight the resilience of Viking family structures in the face of immense environmental and social pressures. Even the sagas, which often dramatized violence and vengeance, invariably contained deep emotional currents. They spoke of passionate love, unwavering loyalty, and heartbreaking grief. Think of the legendary loves that endured through long separations, bitter feuds, and even other marriages. These tales, passed down through generations, served as a cultural acknowledgement of the power of human affection, even when constrained by the harsh realities of their world. They reminded the Vikings that even the fiercest warrior or the most pragmatic husfru could feel profound love and devastating loss. This dichotomy, the brutal reality of life alongside the capacity for deep emotional bonds, is a defining characteristic of the Viking Age. The very concept of mutual respect was central to successful Viking relationships. While patriarchal norms existed, Viking women held surprisingly strong legal rights and significant autonomy within the household. A husband and wife were often seen as partners, each with their own sphere of authority and responsibility, working together for the prosperity of the family. A man who respected his wife's counsel and a woman who capably managed her household would be admired. This respect, born of shared struggle and mutual contribution, formed a strong foundation for affection and enduring partnership. This unique legal and social standing of Viking women still fascinates modern historians. Contrasting sharply with many other European societies of the time, consider the role of trust in such a dangerous world. When a man left on a long voyage, he trusted his wife to manage his lands, protect his children, and maintain his reputation. When he returned, She trusted him to have provided for them and to have acted honorably. This implicit trust, built on shared purpose and absolute reliability, was a cornerstone of their relationships. In a world without formal institutions to enforce every contract, personal trust was paramount, and its presence or absence could make or break a union. The close knit community, for all its potential for gossip and judgment, also provided a vital network of support. In times of crisis, famine, illness, or absence due to raiding neighbors and kin would often step in to assist. This communal interdependence meant that even when personal relationships faced strain, there was a broader societal framework to help families endure. It reinforced the idea that marriage was not just a private affair, but a building block of the entire community, and its success was a shared interest. Ultimately, the relationships of the Viking Age, while shaped by a harsh environment and pragmatic considerations, were fundamentally driven by the same human desires that motivate us today: the longing for connection, for belonging, for a partner with whom to share life's burdens and joys. Their dating rituals may seem foreign, their priorities different, but the core need for love, for a trusted hand to hold through the storms of life, was as strong in the cold fjords of Scandinavia as it is in any bustling city today. The sagas, the archaeological discoveries, and the quiet whisper of history all remind us that even in the most challenging landscapes, the human heart finds a way to forge bonds that defy time, leaving behind a legacy of enduring connection in a world that demanded profound resilience. As the echoes of longboats fade from the fjords, and the whispers of ancient sagas settle around you, perhaps you can feel a gentle quiet descend. The complex world of Viking love, with its blend of practicality and passion, recedes into the mist, leaving behind only the soft hum of history. May the enduring spirit of their connections, forged in a tough land, bring a sense of warmth and peaceful sleep to you tonight.